He'd vowed to protect Shenandoah's trails with a soldier's honor until a boy's trembling pencil showed him some promises outweigh the rules. September draped Shenandoah National Park in a golden quilt, the Blue Ridge Mountains rolling gentle under a sky so wide it held every prayer Luray, Virginia, ever whispered. The harvest hike was in full swing at the ranger station, where gravel paths sang with the crunch of boots, locals in faded flannel, tourists snapping photos, kids waving trail maps like flags. The air carried the scent of pine and Sally's apple pies, steaming on a church table, her hands quick as she sold slices for the choir fund. At the crowd's edge, Tommy Ellis, 10, sat in his wheelchair, its wheels glinting like his hazel eyes, bright with a hope only kids can muster. His notebook, edges curled from months of sketching deer and creeks, lay open on his lap, each page a love letter to Shenandoah. Tommy, who'd watched hawks soar from his porch since he could point, didn't just want to join the hike, he craved a ranger's story. One he could hold close, like a fire on a cold night. Walt Harper, 68, stood by the station's flagpole, his ranger hat shading a face etched by time and trial. A Vietnam vet with a silver crew cut and a uniform stiff as his principles. Walt had walked these trails for 30 years. His badge, a quiet crown. Guard the land. Keep the code. He'd tell young rangers, his voice deep as the valleys he loved. To Luray's older crowd, Jim, 70, a retired mayor, stirring coffee at the church table, or Sally, 60, her apron dusted with flour. Walt was steady as the seasons, a man who'd seen war's shadow and chosen light. His task today was clear. Lead the hike. Share a tale of settlers who'd carved these hills. Keep the group on path. No strays, no chaos. Park rules were his North Star, but as he scanned the crowd, Walt's gaze caught Tommy, parked at the front, his view swallowed by a shifting wall of backpacks and elbows. Tommy's dad, Mike, a mechanic with hands rough as oak bark, leaned down, asking folks to give his boy room. Most smiled, their hearts open as Luray's fields, but one voice cut through, sharp as a frost. Greg Tanner, a 45-year-old realtor from Richmond, had rolled into Shenandoah chasing clicks, not peace, his camera slung like a medal, and his loud talk of branding the wild grated on locals like sand in a shoe. Greg shoved forward, barking, "Clear the front. I need this shot for my page." Mike, calm but firm, said, "My boy's in a chair, sir. Can't move easy. Just wants to see the ranger." Greg's eyes flicked to Tommy, then away, cold as riverstone. "Plenty of space back there. Pal, I didn't drive hours to stand behind a kid." Sally paused, her knife hovering over a pie, and whispered to Jim, "That man's got no heart." Jim, sipping coffee, nodded slow. "Walt'll see it." Tommy's fingers froze on his notebook. A sketch of a ranger's badge half-drawn, smudged by nerves. He'd woken at dawn, telling Mike, "I want a real story, Dad. One that feels like the woods." Now, Greg's shadow loomed, dimming that spark like clouds over the ridge. Walt stood tall, his eyes on the trail map, protocol rooting him like a century oak. Rangers didn't dive into crowd spats. Volunteers like Clara, 15, with her clipboard and braided hair, handled those, but Tommy's slumped shoulders stirred a memory in Walt. Raw as a scar, his son, Danny, at 10, sketching these trails before life took him to Oregon. Danny's letters, folded in Walt's drawer, always closed, still keeping Shenandoah safe. Dad, Walt's grip tightened on the map. Safe for who, if not a boy like Tommy? Greg's voice grew bolder, his selfies blocking Tommy's view entirely. "It's a free park." He snapped when Mike asked him to shift. Clara's pen paused, her frown deepening. A teenage girl, Ellie, 13, stood nearby, phone out, muttering, "This guy's awful." Sally leaned to Jim. "Walt's watching. Bet my pie's on it." But Walt stayed still, rules chaining his boots like iron. Older folks knew that stillness, duty over heart, the mark of men who'd carried orders through fire. Greg pressed further, strutting to Walt's post, mimicking his stance. Camera flashing, "Check the statue." He laughed. Inches from Walt's face, Betty's bolted down. Park code demanded Walt take it. No flinch. No word. Just stone. But then Greg turned to Tommy, pointing sharp. Kid, this is all you get. Guy stands there. Big deal. He nudged Tommy's wheelchair wheel with his boot. A careless jolt that sent Tommy's notebook sliding to the gravel, pages splaying like broken wings. Mike pulled Tommy back, his voice low, hard. That's enough. Mister, Sally gasped, her tray wobbling. Jim stood, coffee splashing. Clara's clipboard trembled, her eyes darting to Walt. The crowd's hush was thick, like dusk falling too fast. Tommy reached for his book, whispering, I just wanted a story. Walt's map crumpled in his fist. Rules said, stay put. But Tommy's voice broke something forged in jungles long ago. Never let the small get crushed. In a heartbeat, Walt moved. He folded his map, left his post, and strode to Tommy, boots crunching louder than the crowd's stunned breaths. Clara froze. Walt Harper, the rule keeper, was breaking rank. He planted himself between Tommy and Greg, his frame a quiet shield. Badge catching the sun like a vow. Greg's camera dropped, his bravado shrinking. What's this about? He stammered. Walt ignored him, his eyes on Tommy, who stared up, clutching his smudged notebook. Half scared, half awed, Walt's face softened, lines from decades easing into warmth. You okay, son? He asked, voice steady as a campfire's glow. Tommy nodded, barely breathing. I wanted your story, sir, he said, small but clear. Walt knelt, gravel biting his knee, meeting Tommy's gaze. You'll get it, Tommy, right here. Sally's eyes misted, Jim's cup shook, and Mike's hand rested on Tommy's shoulder. Steady as faith, Shenandoah's pines stood sentinel as Ranger Walt Harper knelt by Tommy Ellis's wheelchair, his calloused hand dusting off the boy's notebook, its open page showing a ranger sketched in pencil at sharp under a ridge. The harvest hike crowd, Luray's faithful, tourists with cameras, kids chasing shadows, held their breath, whispers soft as leaves on the wind. Sally, sick, gripped her pie tray, tears pooling like rain on a barn roof. Jim, 70, set his coffee down, nodding like he'd seen the world tilt right. Clara, the volunteer, let her clipboard hang, her sternness gone. Greg Tanner, the realtor who jolted Tommy's chair, stepped back, his camera limp, voice a mutter. He's not supposed to move, he said, but no one cared. Every heart was with Walt and Tommy, a ranger and a boy rewriting the day's tale. Park rules screamed for Walt to stand, march back, stay mute. But hearts don't march to orders, and Walt's was awake. Seeing Tommy's courage, where protocol saw only a kid, Walt handed Tommy his notebook, tapping the sketch. That's a fine ranger, he said, voice warm, kind. Let's give him a story to finish. Tommy's grin broke wide, brighter than the Blue Ridge at noon. Yes, sir, he whispered, pencil trembling with hope. Walt rose, guiding Tommy's chair to the trailhead, his tone firm to volunteers. This boy's my guest. Mike, Tommy's dad, followed, his mechanic's hands unclenching, a tear tracing his cheek like dew on steel. God bless you, Mike mouthed, but Walt just nodded. He sought no praise. Clara stepped forward, her clipboard tight. Older Americans knew her. Rules were her compass. Like Walt's had been, would she call him back? Instead, Clara's lips curved. Get him a clear view, Walt, she said. Stepping aside, the crowd clapped, a gentle wave. Locals like Pastor Evans, 62, joining in, his Sunday tie loose but proud. That's Luray's soul, he murmured, hands clapping loud. Walt stayed close as the hike began, rangers weaving through trails thick with fern and memory. He walked beside Tommy, voice low. Just for him, in 1790, Walt said, settlers crossed these peaks with nothing but grit. Like you, Tommy, stronger than any storm, Tommy sketched as he listened, his pencil catching Walt's hat. The trails curve, a hawk overhead. Sally watched, her voice soft to a neighbor. Walt's heart's bigger than these hills. Jim leaned in, gruff, takes guts to ditch the rules at his age. Greg tried to slip away, but Clara and Pastor Evans blocked him, their stares like winter frost. Time to go, Clara said, pointing to the lot. Greg shuffled off, his camera silent, his swagger lost to Luray's quiet strength. The hike wove deeper, but the real path formed back at the station. Ellie, 16, who'd filmed Walt kneeling, posted it to Luray's small Facebook page. No global fame, just 400 shares by dusk. Enough for a town of 4,000. Ranger breaks, rules for kid in wheelchair. It read, liked by Sally's choir. Jim's VFW buddies. At the diner, talk buzzed over biscuits and gravy. Walt saw that boy, Sally told a waitress, voice fierce. Always knew he was more than a badge. Jim added, Tommy's smile's worth any rulebook. Older folks, those who'd seen wars, recessions, kids grow, nodded. Walt's move wasn't rebellion, it was duty, the kind you carry past 60. By nightfall, the video hit 1,000 views, small but mighty, like Luray's heart. After the hike, as dusk painted the park indigo, Clara caught Walt at the station, his badge gleaming under a lantern. You'll hear about leaving post, she said, half smiling. Walt's eyes flickered. Vietnam's jungles, orders he'd followed, friends he'd buried, couldn't let Tommy fade. Clara, he said, voice steady, not on my watch. She handed him a coffee. No scolding. This park's for kids like him. You proved it. Next morning, Sally's pie sale raised $300, and Jim, with his old carpentry tools, carved a sign, Tommy's Path, for those who dream. Mike nailed it by the trail, Tommy watching, his notebook bursting with sketches. Walt's face, the pines, a path he'd claimed. It's mine, Tommy said, grinning wide. Walt tipped his hat, silent but sure. He'd bent one rule, kept a greater one, lift the small when they need it. Luray didn't let the moment slip. By spring, the festival rolled in, lanterns glowing like stars, kids racing past Tommy, who rolled along, his sketches framed at the diner. A local hero at 10. Walt stood by the station, same as always, but folks saw him anew. Not just a ranger, but a man who'd stopped time for a boy. Sally started a fund for more trails, naming them for kids who'd felt unseen. Ellie's idea, born from that video. Jim spoke at the VFW hall, voice rough. Walt didn't break a rule. He built a road. Mike, never one for words, told Tommy, he gave you a story. Son, keep it alive. Pastor Evans preached on it Sunday, saying, kindness is our gospel. And Walt wrote a chapter, older Americans, who'd lived through enough to know life's hard edges. Understood. Walt's choice was the America they'd fought for. One where a boy's dream outweighs a manual's ink. Shenandoah's trails stretched on, but Luray carried Walt's act like a hymn. Clara launched a wheelchair hike. Walt, leading, Tommy's sketch folded in his pocket like a prayer. Kids showed grandparents Ellie's video, sparking talks over pie about what parks should be. Homes for every soul, not just the loud. For those of us with years carved in our hands, who know life's lessons come slow. It's a story that holds a boy's courage, a ranger's heart, a town's faith. It's not about tossing rules. It's about stepping up, lifting a kid to where he belongs. That's the America we hand down, the one we tell our grandkids to cherish, where kindness writes the tales that endure. If this story warmed your soul, don't let it fade. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for more tales that light the way. Share below. What's a kindness you've seen that changed a heart? If you're in Luray or across the globe, tell us where Tommy's story found you. Stay for our next video. You won't believe how one small act lit up a town's spirit. Keep the faith, and we'll see you soon.